Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Small Business Stories. You know me, Dr. LL, Loralyn Mears, host of the show, and we are here today to talk about product launches. Every week, we've got a fantastic guest who just shares their insights so openly, and this is one of the reasons why our show continues to grow the way that it is. And it's also a big reason because of your listenership. So we certainly appreciate that. So in the house today, we've got Lon Riley. He's the founder of the DPI Laboratory in Catalyst Printers. And you're thinking, okay, where's this going? Well, he's here to talk to us about the ups and downs, the perils, right, and the benefits of launching new product lines. And he's very nice and graciously agreed to talk quite candidly about the mistakes that he's made, how he's overcome them, and the adjustments and things that he's had to do based on those lessons learned. So, Lon, with that, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dr. LL. Appreciate being here.
Well, this is what it's all about, right? We're all in the business of making money. I mean, yes, there are nonprofits and folks that we do have on the show who have more mission centric sorts of approaches and needs that they're doing. But as entrepreneurs, as small business owners, it is about making money. And one of the ways that you can keep up is by introducing new products that the market is looking for. So, talk to us now, a year plus after you've done like a big launch. What's the reality, right? Everything looked good in planning, but what happened after the fact that surprised you? And then we'll rewind it and figure out what you did along the way to make corrections.
Okay, great. Yeah, we launched our Catalyst printers line in January of 2025. So we're bumping up on 18 months now being live. By all accounts, went reasonably well out of the gate. We had a pretty good plan. One of the challenges we have was we're a very capital intensive company. So we sell our printers range from $15,000 up.
Oof.
So capital intensive in a very incumbent dominated space. So companies that have been around 10, 15, 20 years, lots of SEO, lots of brand recognition, the things we didn't have. So we kind of entered it in the competitive space. My team and I have experience with this. We've been around for a while. We know quite a lot of the industry players, a lot of the challenges that some of the other incumbent technologies have. So we really built it around let's address the things that people really dislike about some of the current technologies. Let's fix those problems and move forward. In our engineering brains, it makes sense. You come in with something that is a little bit faster, a little bit better built, a little bit lower cost, and kind of hit all the high points, and it becomes a no brainer. And we found it a little bit more challenging than you'd expect, getting first of all just into the market penetration, and then moving upstream a little bit.
One of the things that makes you unique, at least relative to many of the guests that we have, is that you manufacture electronics. And I'm guessing over the last year, you would have been subjected to all kinds of ups and downs with tariffs and the threat of offshore competition. Let's talk about that because everybody says, oh, okay, made in the USA, it's too expensive. So they go offshore and they even eschew the name brands that they know. You talk about the ones there that have the recognition as being, oh, printers because they've been around forever. People say, yeah, it's price. I'm so price sensitive. How do you combat all of that?
There's a lot to unpack with that. We when we went to design this, we had kind of a core set, and most of the printers that we do, we work in the UV space, so it's kind of like an inkjet printer, like you might have on your desk, but it's UV cured. So our technology is used for, you see the commercials on the promotional products all the time online, the tumblers and phone cases and golf balls and all those different things that we print on. So most of those products are manufactured overseas. What we've done is we've taken a combination of things. We buy our chassis from a manufacturer overseas. We buy our software from a different manufacturer. We have a US manufacturer of inks. We do all of our engineering and quality control here in the States and all of our support in the States. So we put together a lot of different pieces into one contiguous really product line that we manage from here. So all of the things you just mentioned, yes, we launched a product line on January 7th. Tariffs came into play about 2.5 months after that, which were a bit of a mess for us because we had containers inbound at the same time. When you talk about from a small business standpoint, and I have no challenges with saying we are still a small business, by all accounts, especially compared to our competitors. those are business killers. Things that you can plan all day long, but when your costs increase by 3 or 4x overnight, those are the kinds of things that can really put companies out of business fast. So we had a lot to navigate there in the early months, and we were able to do it through a combination of really planning, negotiating some concessions with some of our vendors, kind of like we're all in this together. And we kind of got together and just said, hey, how are we going to best manage our timing and make sure that our customers are taken care of, our product development initiatives don't slow down, and that we're able to deliver all the things that we've promised.
As a founder, talk to us about the emotional pressures of all of that, right? So you've got tariffs that hit you out of the blue, pretty much after you launch, like you said, cargo containers halfway across the ocean when the tariffs hit. And you've got all of the financial pressures because you've got to make payroll, you've got to satisfy customer needs and orders. And then you yourself, right? You look human, Lon, right? You're not a bot. So
Doing it.
how do you get through just even the emotional chaos?
Action. Do something. I mean, and it would be, I don't know. I'm sure you have people in your audience who've launched businesses and they just took off from day one. That probably happens. It doesn't happen to most of us. There's been more than one Friday afternoon that I've sat here going, "What have I done?" Like, oh my God, what have I done? Like, we're in the middle of this. The deals didn't close this week. The things that we were certain were going to come through pushed. The prices that we had been quoted on things have now tripled, and we've got to figure out how that's going to work and timing. It's hard. I mean, it's really hard. And the reality is two things. One, take action. If there are times our social media, we thought this is going to be the viral hit that everybody looks
Right.
at and nobody cares. Do it again. I told my wife the other day I was working on one project, and I've been through probably 30 iterations of design to try to get to the end. And I told her, I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I've done this 30 times and it hasn't worked. And she says, get ready for 31.
Right.
And that's it. Do that. And then two, I think the other thing has been visualize success. Visualize what this is going to look like when it does, because it will. You keep jamming, you keep hammering, and understand that you're probably doing better than you think. I've had a couple conversations recently with other founders, and that's another one. Ask for help, ask somebody, because somebody else's opinion is going to be different, and you're probably doing better than you think. You're in your mind, the legendary performance that was going to happen in year one may or may not. It may take two. It's everything costs 3 to 5 times as much as you budget, and it probably takes twice as long to get there. So, in spite of the best laid plans, problems are going to happen. And I think if you take action, visualize success, and really ask others and kind of act on those opinions.
And I'm smiling here, not laughing at your pain, Lon, not at all. I'm laughing with you because when you said, well, things don't go as planned, and then things cost more than you think that they're going to, and it's harder, and it's really freaking hard, and you do it 30 times, and then you go, oh, okay, now what do I do? Well, like your wife said, right? You do it 31 because that's what you got to do. And at some point, I do think all of the things line up, and it comes through grit and tenacity and chasing the right problem. I've spent time chasing the wrong problem for sure, and we all know how that ended up. But if you're chasing the right problem, I do believe you can get there.
That's a big deal. And I mean, it's my partner has a sign that is always behind him that says laughter is the only way out. I mean, and so sometimes, that does help to just kind of put a little different focus on what you're doing. But yeah, and it does, especially when things get difficult, you do have to reevaluate. You don't want to chase because we were so convinced this is the right way to do things. This is the right product line. This is what people want. At some point, if it's not working, you've got to take a hard look and go, were we right or were we wrong? And as we've kind of gone through that iteration, we've continued to validate the things that we've done, but we also pivoted on some things that we kind of missed on. Some brand power issues, some marketing things, some of our pricing structures that we found we need to be a little bit more flexible with. It has to be a little bit elastic. We can't we try to keep hammering forward, but we don't want to be so rigid and committed to what we've designed to be blind to the fact that things might need to change.
I'm going to come back and unpack each of those things with the marketing and the branding. But first, I just want to get a little bit more established on the foundation, get a little more grounded. One of the things that I really look at is interpretation, misinterpretation risk. So when we as founders, you specifically as the founder here, put everything to paper and thought, great, here we go. And then you found out that some of the assumptions that you make didn't hold up in the real world. So talk to us about those operational mistakes where you interpreted things, but did so incorrectly ultimately. What did you do to counter?
I really, so a lot of what I'm a big fan of Hamilton Helmer's seven powers framework. We do a lot of work with that, kind of comparing ourselves to competitors, and brand power is one of the big ones. We really swung and missed on brand power. My engineering brain, I would say I'm an engineer who really, really desperately wants to be an artist. I'm not. My engineering brain says you bring a better product, you bring a better price, you've got a little bit of recognition, and voila, people will you build it, they will come. I very much underestimated brand power. So we had a large base of trust with our team. We had a large base of trust with our expertise and with our product line, but we did not have that incumbent brand power. We didn't do enough early on to penetrate the market. We tried to hold the line in a competitive stance, and we tried to play their game. And when you enter an incumbent space and you try to meet them where they live, you are probably going to lose. So we really needed to change things up a little bit.
I want to pull on that a little bit more because this is a problem that so many founders have. Most that I know are not trust fund babies, right? And so they don't have unlimited resources to be able to tap to play at yeah, I'll launch a Super Bowl ad for 7 million for 10 seconds and then everybody will know me, right? And I'll have my brand power. But talk to us a little bit more about those brand power mistakes and what you had to do to find your groove, as it were, so that you can compete on your terms, in your way, in your voice, and make the connection to the hearts and minds of your target customers in the way that speaks to your brand. Give us more details, please.
Pricing was a big deal. So we I had a number of conversations about pricing, and we did a lot of market research on this before we came in. And when we're coming in with what we're claiming to be a competitive product that is it either meets or exceeds the capabilities of our incumbent, but we priced it a little bit less. And I had a lot of opinions on that. A lot of people said, if you're claiming to have a better product, why would you not price it at or beyond where they are? And my answer to that was that reason: we don't have the brand power. We have to make a concession to do that. Where we came into the market, we entered into a place that nobody was really playing in. So we had some of the larger incumbents, bigger, more expensive equipment, and then we had some very small, more hobby-based machines. So we built a production level system, and we tried to make it a system, and we put it in an unusual space between. That space between was extraordinarily hard, or was much harder than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a no-brainer. You collect the people who don't want to pay up for this effectively the same thing, and you collect the people who have outgrown or understand that the starter machines aren't going to fund a business. The reality is it's a difficult place to play, for that reason, because it becomes, well, I can just spend a little bit more and buy a name brand, or I can spend a little bit less and maybe have a lower risk. That's a story that you have to be able to tell. And I think out of the gate, we weren't able to effectively communicate the value of the platform, which is much more important than a feature benefit price discussion. And so, it took us probably 6 months to figure that out. We tried to compete on feature benefit price, and where we should have been competing was systems thinking, and really a business level planning that was going to connect with the business owners and the buyers of this product.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because I've gone through this so many times, not just with my business, Steeris, but different employers that I've worked for where you've got all the different product launches. And all the engineers, or I like to say, like the techno weenies, want to suck you down that rabbit hole of, oh, features, benefits, because this other so and so competitor doesn't have this or doesn't have that. And then what you find is that as you get pull and push from the marketing people who say, oh, here's a new opportunity, let's go in this direction, you end up on the path of evangelism. And technology education, and in fact, that was my first job title after my PhD, was technology evangelist. It's a really, really small little cliff to live and die on because one move the wrong way, like that's it, you plummet to your death, you're done. The other way, you're like, okay, you get an inch or two, and a bit of reprieve to try to go back to the mainland and figure things out and then come back to the edge again. Do you think that was part of the problem, that you were sucked down the rabbit hole of evangelism and education and trying to prove your value?
A little bit. I think, if I've got some experience with this in the past of, it always, like I say, it's everybody loves your idea until it's time to separate them from their cash.
Right.
Once it becomes time, so when we did the market research, we were very careful to not spend too much time with friends and family, prior customers, people who they know the answer to the question. They purchased a machine, it was $60,000. They're not happy with it. It's a little bit slow. They could use more speed. They want to reduce their ink cost. We asked them, what are those features important? The answer is yes. We built that platform, and then we go, hey, now we built it, let's buy it. And they went, yeah, but I already spent 60,000 on that, so I need to. And now we have a different dynamic. It's not selling on the features and benefits because we clearly win on that. It's changing the conversation into a longer term business decision than a features and benefits right now today decision, because that becomes difficult, especially when there's sunk cost involved.
That's a good segue for my next question. So, talk to us about consumer behavior, right, versus founder assumptions. So, you went out, you did your research, you kind of got some answers, and like you said perfectly, everybody wants it until you ask them to pay for it, right? And then it's like, well, right, 50,000 excuses. So, how do you navigate getting the market research and getting it done correctly as best you can before you launch? And then what are you doing monitoring, and what are you monitoring after launch to say, oh, okay, we don't have this quite dialed in right. I've misinterpreted some things here. What do I do? How do I adjust? Talk to us about your process and your metrics.
So before launch, it was a lot of those conversations, and really we focused quite a bit on the people who were interested in entering the space. So our type of technology complements people that they might have a laser system and they're building customization with laser, and now they want to add color. So it kind of fits in there. They have embroidery and they're doing clothing, but they want to add promotional products. So we went to a lot of those customers and said, hey, if you were to enter this space, what are the challenges? What are the things that you really don't care for with the current systems? Why haven't you done this already? And we went after those. I will say that we spent a lot of time on those markets, which we should have. We should have spent more time on the conversion market. What would it take you to switch from your current solution? What would be the inflection point at which you would say, okay, we're going to scrap that one and we're going to come over to yours? 85% of our customers are probably 85, maybe even a little bit higher, are new entrants into this technology. We do have a small portion that we have converted from other brands, but it's not the level of penetration that I would have liked to see so far. So we've had to pivot around that.
Your situation almost begs for a buyback program where you're like, we'll buy the expensive 60,000 incumbents printer. We're going to take it back and we're going to resell it. Maybe not necessarily on the dark market, but there's always a secondary, whatever aftermarket opportunity. Even if you sell it for parts and strip it, it can be worth more
Yeah.
separated into parts than it can as a whole. But talk to us about the pressure of your team and everybody else saying, no, 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 we're starting to panic. We got to do this long. We can't. We need to make changes. And you say, no, we are committed to this. We're going down the path. How do you balance that decision integrity?
the I guess the good thing with having a smaller team is there are only so many things we can handle at one time. So we have to be super careful with our time and how we prioritize those things. So, and I may be the biggest culprit in this one. I may be the biggest problem of the one who's coming up and going, here's the new idea. Hey, I have this idea. Hey, we should go this. We should do this market, and we've got this product idea. I'm probably the one who's the worst at that, but I do tend to keep it in check. My partner is a very operationally focused person, and he's the one that kind of says, hey, we agreed to these three. If you want to add four, you need to pick one of those three to remove, because we physically can't handle it. We need to focus on this area. We also, I've worked with history, many companies that are very busy chasing rainbows, sell anything to anyone at any cost. Whatever new idea comes around, we stop what we're doing, we pour all the resources into it. So I know how bad that can be when it gets out of control. So we have been even with the ideas, which is the fun part. I mean, the reason I do this is because I like the technology and I like creating things and I like having fun. So some things I do choose to do simply because they amuse me and I really like it, but it can't be anything that really affects the core of the business. And so we are careful about changing anything that's fundamental to the core of the business. We have a longer term plan for lanes that we want to add. At this point, though, 18 months into a product launch, it really is about the product and the customer and the service and the delivery, because you really don't have room for errors there. One bad Google review, I got the machine, I don't like it, is disastrous for a brand in the first 2 years. So we're ultra cautious with the process and the product, which is where our focus has to remain.
Oh, exactly. And you nailed it when you said every one of us that's a visionary, an ideator, we need a stellar ops person that keeps us in our lane, right? Because we're all little ADHD squirrels and we're like, oh, shiny nut, sparkly. And then we need to be pulled
Yeah.
in. That's the only way that folks like us, right, succeed, because we have those ops people that are keeping us grounded. So you also mentioned something that's also a good segue for my next question around the emotional side of course correction. So I know I have fatigued my team left, right, straight, backwards, left, right? And they're like, everybody's running in the hamster wheel, and that can be really difficult. And I know I've created some burnout for them. I'm learning, I've apologized, I've done what I can, but that's the reality, right? I have done that. And then as an entrepreneur, the person with the idea, I find I get emotionally attached to some of the ideas that I have. And when it doesn't work out the way that I think it's going to, I do take it personally because I failed. I failed my team. How do you feel when you're looking back at something that required adjustments and think, "Oh, wow, didn't quite hit the bullseye there." What goes through your head?
That's a interesting question. I think from an idea perspective, we haven't really run across that yet with the idea thing. We've got a couple of things that I wish we'd moved a little bit faster on. I've made a couple of business decisions that potentially affected the team negatively. And at the time you think you're doing the right thing, we had a couple of, when it comes to, especially with a new product release, it's really important. Trust is the biggest thing. So when it comes to brand power, brand power really to me equates to trust. I trust that this company is going to, one, be in business in a year. We heard that a lot when we first launched. How do I know you're going to be in business in a year?
Mm.
My answer was, you don't. I don't even know if I'm going to be here in a year. I mean, we don't know anything, but the reality is these are the safeguards we put in place. This is why we built it this way. This is what our financing looks like. And we're able to tell the story and answer the question effectively. But when it comes down to making those decisions, I made some decisions early on to not discount, and I could have discounted and landed a couple of larger contracts. I felt at the time it was more important to maintain our budget discipline, maintain our margin integrity, maintain those things. The reality was it was more important to land those bigger deals and build the trust. And that was a huge miss on my part. Two in particular that I still think about from day. My wife tells me, you got to stop, like you got to let that go. I'm like, I know, but it could have changed the trajectory of the first 6 to 7 months of the company if I just made a couple of concessions. But I felt at the time it was the right thing to do for the business and the right thing to do for the team and the longevity. And the reality is it put things at risk. And they're mistakes that, the sin is not making the mistakes. The sin is not recognizing them and then making them over and over again. So I think we've corrected course on that and made that. But those were stressful moments because it did feel like I put the company a little bit at risk with those decisions, meaning I put my team at risk, which is, to your point, extraordinarily. It's the most stressful thing.
Oh, yes. And even though you've essentially answered it, I'm going to state the question specifically just related to what you've just talked about so that our audience who's listening, who's distracted, they're in the car, someone cut them off, whatever else, right? In today's environment, Lon, is the advantage getting it right the first time or being able to adapt, learn, and adjust faster once you've launched? Which do you think?
I would love to get it right the first time every time. I aspire to that, but I think that if you have to be able to adjust. And I think we, like anything else, we take anything else in personal, business, whatever. You take the best information you've got. You make a decision based on what you're seeing, where you think the outcomes are going to be, what's best for the business. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't for forces that are in or out of your control. When it doesn't, I think the biggest skill is being able to pivot, understand what did or did not work, and not cast blame on everybody else. It would be easy for me to say, oh, those market factors. If it hadn't been for those darn tariffs, we would be at a different place. That may or may not be true, but we made some pretty good adjustments around that, and we kept things rolling at a time when it was really really hard for a lot of people to do that. So we made mistakes, but we also corrected, and there's a lot of positive in that as well.
One of the things, like I said, I focus on in as an invisibility decoder, right? It's all about misinterpretation risk. And I've got this in my book here, Misinterpreted, where the signals you're putting out aren't aligned with the way and where buyers are making decisions, right? So decision integrity gets compromised. So where I'm asking is, do you think a lot of product launches, entrepreneurs in particular, struggle because they didn't quite read the market signals properly early enough? Do you think that's the reason, or do you think it's the product isn't really ready for market, doesn't have the right fit, or do you think it's misinterpreting what the market opportunity and the signals are telling them to do?
Oh, that's a really good question. I'm actually not sure. I think there's a lot going on there. I think I mean it's really a combination of both. I think and the risk for people who are launching a product too is we spent almost a year in development. So we took all that data, we took those signals, and then we were so personally invested in what we put out. It's really hard to if there is a flaw with it, it's really hard to see it. It's sometimes it's really it feels like, okay, maybe the market just doesn't understand how good this really is. And that's a critical inflection point, I think, to your point of you've got to be able to take a step back and go, hang on a second. If I've heard this two or three times, maybe we got something wrong. Maybe the rest of the world is correct and we've misstepped here. Does that answer your question?
It does. And it also speaks to the length of market research. It takes us so long, right? Even like you said, like a year, even 6 months is long in this market because everything's happening like this. And by the time you've done the research, the market has shifted. The next hot sparkly thing is out there. AI has done some new finagled thing, right? And then we're all like, wait, wait, wait. So we're playing catch up. We're building to products and specs and market needs and ideas and expectations that are already outdated by the time we launch. And that's, I
Yep.
think, a really tricky dance for all of us to figure out.
And I used to work for somebody who would say all the time, perfect is the enemy of better. And, there's so many people that just, you've got to wait until everything is perfect to pull the trigger. And the reality is you're going to get eaten up in business if you do that. You've got to, at some point, you have to say, we're right there. We've got what we need to be successful. We've got what we need to deliver the product consistently to our customers. We know this is, what the market needs. Let's go. And then we'll continue to disrupt ourselves as things go on. I think that's another big one is we have to be willing as product development people to consistently disrupt our own business, because if you don't disrupt your own, somebody's going to do it for you. And I think that's where it's easy to slip into a pattern once you've done all the hard work and you've built this thing and you feel like it's kind of right there, and say, let's just kind of ride this wave for a while and enjoy this work we've done. And that can be problematic, especially in the technology space where things do move so fast. And you mentioned early on the competition from overseas. It's coming, and they're getting better and better and faster, and service delivery is getting better. And so those are things that we have to be prepared for.
Oh, indeed. As someone who's been in product development on that software, informatics, biotech side of
Yep.
things, was always at odds and in conflict with the technology people, the software engineers. because the mathematicians, statisticians, because they wanted everything to be 99.9999999%
Yeah.
ready and accurate. And I'm like, 80%, let's go, sell it. Right. They're like,
pull,
it just,
pull the trigger, charge. Yeah.
right, right. I mean, healthy tension, air quotes,
Yeah.
you live and learn, right? It's,
Well, and that's one that, I mean, information, informatics and biotech, I mean, those things just are moving at such an accelerated rate. And now with the AI wave, it's becoming faster and faster and faster. So I see where you're coming. I mean, you really have to at some point say, okay, I hear you, but we got to keep moving forward.
right. That's just it. And you got to balance that, right? Little
Yeah.
bits, like I said, healthy tension, internally and try to get that
Healthy
figured out.
tension.
Now, Lon, as we're wrapping up the show, where can people find you and your printers?
Our website is dpi-lab.com or catalystprinters.com. We're also on Instagram. A lot of the things that we do, I put a lot of my business writings on LinkedIn. So connect with me on LinkedIn, Lon Riley, on LinkedIn, easy to find. That's where I do most of my business oriented writing. We do a lot of our product features and the things that we create on Instagram because like I said, the artist thing, we like to create things. It's part of the fun of what we do. So we do create a lot and show what the machines are capable of. So our Instagram, DPI Lab, and then of course Facebook.
Excellent. Now, last question. It is our signature question of the show. So, if we got to peek in that closet of yours and there was some footwear, boots, shoes, something in your closet that personified you, Lon Riley, what are we looking at? And I'm curious, is it going to be a pair of sneakers that you have customized using one of your own printers? Like, what is it?
That would be a good idea. I should do that. It's probably I have a pair. You mentioned boots. I have a pair of boots, Red Wing boots that I bought in the mid '90s. So probably they're probably 30 years old now. They've got a nice epoxy stain on the side from my first job as an engineer. And I think those, if I had to pick a piece that would be more me, it would be that. It would be kind of like buy quality and use it as long as you can. You keep it going, keep using it, buy something that's functional. At the time, I'm certain I could not afford those when I bought them in the mid '90s, but I hunkered down, and here they are 30 years later. I still pull them out from time to time.
There you go. So, thank you for that. Lon, appreciate having you on the show today.
Thank you.